I'd like to introduce Ian VERCHERE from Roadhouse Interactive in Vancouver to talk about the transition from game development to online game development. So take it away.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me all. Thanks for making it up and out this early in the morning. I hope you all had a good time at the parties last night. So I'm going to speak very briefly about transitioning a development studio from console to live game operations, which is not as easy a transition as you think. That drawing up there with respect to the little prints is my initial plan for the studio. We would just make this production company and all would be well. What we ended up with, of course, is that. It's not a hat, it's a drawing of a snake actually swallowing an elephant. So that was sort of what, your plan never survives its first contact with the enemy. That's an old military saying. It's totally true in doing this transition. So it's not very many people here, but just very quickly, are there any console developers here or anyone who has any console experience at all? Okay, good. Yeah, that's good to know. And then are you still doing console? Who's still doing console? Yeah, I thought so. So I just want a little bit about us, about Roadhouse. So amidst the whole doom and gloom of the Vancouver game industry, with all the layoffs at EA Canada and the closure of Radical, there was a lot of doom and gloom. We started Roadhouse, myself, Tony Williams, and James Hursthouse, in December of 2009, and very quickly, with our embrace of live games, Unity, iOS, Congregate, Facebook, Android, we grew to very quickly become one of the largest independent developers in Canada. We have about 60 programmers, designers, artists, and executives. And if you look at our track record, we built some of the most successful games in history. It's a weird thing to say, but if you look at our pedigrees and where we all came from, it's pretty weird. I mean, there's Capcom, THQ, Ubisoft, Activision, Disney, we're all there. I mean, I produced those two games on the left, SSX Tricky and NBA Street, two of the highest rated PlayStation games of all time. They sold millions and millions of units. So it's kind of weird to be in this sort of this completely different space. Dawn of War, Company Heroes, EA Skate, Need for Speed, Medal of Honor. So it's the pedigree of the studio is really good, but it doesn't mean diddly squat really when you're in this new online space. So what do we do now? We make tablet games for tablet, smartphone, and browser. We love working with the guys at Exit Games, the Photon guys, and Swerve. They're here, so go by and say hi. We just closed Family Guy Online. We're expanding our closed beta for MechWarrior Tactics, which is mwtactics.com. You should check that out. We're giving out closed beta keys for that right now. And we have a ton of other titles in various stages of development for different platforms. I can talk about these ones. That's MechWarrior. We've got Elemental Power, which is coming out on Congregate. It's a tablet-based card battle game. We're working on a social casino game called Trophy Bingo. And we're doing another pin-up card battle game, which is really exciting. That particular segment is very, very compelling. So that's MechWarrior. It's Unity, it's turn-based, it's Hex, it's about as old school as you get. There's a quick look at Family Guy, which we just sunsetted, but I'll get on to the main meat of it. Not a lot of time to talk, so I'll stick with it. So our entire company is smaller than some of the dev teams that we used to run or work on. So FIFA, for example, at EA Canada is approaching 200 people. That's a single team. There's an old compadre of mine from EA is here, and we were talking about how the business, the relative scale of a console business is, you have $25 million budgets and you try and return $200 million in investment. It's like the motion picture industry, and what we've done now is we've moved into basically the television industry, where you put up a pilot and you see how it does and you change. If you look at what a game looks like from the day you launch it to what it looks like a year later or 2 years later, they're very, very different things. So we had to shift our culture from 60 people making one game to 60 people making 8 games. Now on the plus side, every one of us knows how to make a hit game. We've all got 90 plus and sold millions, but our production value and our expectations are very high, so that's good. But what we've done is we've learned to leverage our skills, and that's really important. We've not chosen to stick with what has worked with us in the past, because that's a big mistake. So this is a photograph I took of our whiteboard, and this is the equation for a console studio success. I've distilled it down. Specialized resources plus a thick design doc minus analytics equals fail. That right there is the single biggest lesson that we learned as a group. So you don't take this big doc hand it off, and expect to have something. Without analytics, you're nothing. So to that end, you cannot make your game simple enough. Your game design and your business model are exactly the same thing, which is really hard for someone who's just, I'm the designer. Yes, you are, but what is your business model? So you can no longer separate your game design and your business model. With a live game, you're never final. That was a huge thing for people to adjust to. And designers, of course, you've got to let go of their convictions and let the analytics speak for themselves. But from a production standpoint, for me, a rich data set lets me focus our efforts and our team on the resources to ensure the best ROI for our run rate. So that was really, really good. Let's see here. Oh yeah, one thing, self-inflicted feature creep. You don't want to do that. You got to put your product up, get to the minimum awesome product, put it up there and just start listening to the people who are playing your game. Don't sit there and agonize over, well, you know, we need this, we got to add that, it's not ready yet. Put it up. Don't hesitate. Put your game up. That's a huge thing. Product management. Well, we got rid of development directors and project managers. It was the best thing we ever did. We have fully embraced agile and scrum development. Our smaller teams, they self-organize and they sit in clusters in the studio. I don't know if you can see that, but there's all these posts that come down. Everyone has standing desks and mobile desks, so whenever we reconfigure a project, we just move all around. That's a quick look at our studio in Vancouver. The smaller teams are really good for velocity and morale, and everybody sees what's going on, because we have these sort of company-wide show and tells on Friday. Not everyone was capable of making the transition, so we had to make some changes. There are people out there who prefer this sort of classic cycle of, okay, we're finaling, I'm going to ship it, and then I'm going to go on a vacation. If you can make those people adjust, you have really good assets that will become your tools and infrastructure group. But some people really do thrive in the live environment. They love fixing bugs in real time. They come up with creative solutions to problems, and these people tend to emerge as leads. I'll be happy to share some anecdotes and some real, we ran Family Guy Online for about 18 months. Some really, interesting stories I can share with you about that. But be prepared to make changes and accept that not everyone is cut out for smaller teams with more independence and less overhead. Some people really like the structure of the big company. Yeah, your dev team's going to grow at launch, not shrink. So that was the other thing. You have two kinds of content. You've got new precedent and recurring. So when you launch a new piece of technology or a new feature, say PvP or something like that into your online world, well, you still have to carry on the resources to sustain it and update it, right? So that becomes recurring content. So your team actually, you've got your dev team and then your ops team, they begin to overlap and expand. So that's something that people who have shipped shrink-wrap product tend to miss out on. What are some of the things that we did wrong? Well, we started QA early, but not early enough. So remember, you're not just analyzing, or you're not just testing your tech or your systems, you're analyzing data. So if there's one thing I could suggest you do is you start testing as early as possible, because you're going to find stuff in the system that you could fix early, and then you don't want to leave it too late when everything piles up. We allocated too many resources to creating content and features for launch at the expense of content creation tools. So that was really important. We had this sort of feeling of like, okay, we got to have a ton of stuff up there when we launch. We got to get all this stuff up there. Well, what we should have done is and we had tools in place, but we should have scaled back the content and focused on making our authoring environment super robust. I mean, Unity and some of the platforms we use do give us great authoring environments, but that was something that if we had to do over again, for sure, I would make sure that all of the tools and the authoring environments were simple enough for somebody to come in and within 24 hours of joining the company could build content. And of course, we underestimated the amount of resources that were required to support our recurring content once we went live. One of the best hires I made was I stole a producer from Club Penguin. And that's somebody who really snapped us into a production cycle, because now all of a sudden you're making weekly builds. It's not like a sequel, not SSX tricky every sort of 18 months. Every week we were deploying stuff. So we very quickly became a lean, mean, live game operating machine. It was really exciting and super fun. So that was what we did wrong. What we did right? Well, using a projector and a screen, we made sure everyone on the team could see our KPIs, such as CCUs, DAU, MAU. Can't stress this enough. If you've got a studio, share the data with everybody so that everyone can see what's going on, right? So nobody can say, well, I don't know what the game's doing. You have all of this data, put it up there, show it. I've been in one company where they had like flat screen monitors just running all through, and they had all the game data upstreaming in real time. We didn't crash. That was huge. There was only 24 of us working at one point on an MMO, and we made sure it stood up. Don't let your game crash. We sourced and used providers for many of the online game systems, such as CDN, payment gateways, our CSR and analytics. We work with Sleepy Giant. The guys at Swerve, we built so we were smart enough to know what we don't know. So we worked with people with really good experience, and I'd recommend you do that. And we spoke to the individual team members. We did sort of one-on-one reviews with everybody that we acquired. We bought 2 console developers to form Roadhouse. And not everyone's tailored to the live environment. So we found roles and opportunities for people that suited their work style, which was really good. And so differently, what would I do differently? Well, I would release with the bare minimum of content with no marketing. I would get the economy moving, and then I would scale, and then I would spend money on marketing. So that's really good. That's a totally applicable piece of learning that for whether your game is huge or independent. I would accept that my early users who have been exposed to our mistakes, they might not stick around, but they ultimately help you make your game better for everyone. So we have, with MechWarrior Tactics, we're selling Founders Packs. So it's basically people are paying to get into the closed beta. We expect those people to stick around, but when you're fixing a game in public, you may not retain those people, and you have to accept that. And then here. This was amazing, because as console guys, our old school thinking was, you want to make the game last for X amount of time, or you want to play for $5 an hour or something like that, whatever those metrics were. You want to get the game to the point where it could not be any easier, right? Then go take a week off and come back and make it twice as easy as it was before. So it's really amazing. There were some good talks yesterday where people speaking about you shouldn't have a tutorial, your game should be so intuitive, you don't need that stuff. I think that's really, really valid. And we put in a good tutorial, but it was amazing to watch people like a quest, like an NPC standing there with an arrow over their head and watching people in real time go this way and then just turn and get lost. And you go, what did you miss? What was not about the arrow, So you have to accept the fact that not everyone's going to understand that. So that was something that we would definitely do differently. Now this is short. It sort of feels like Pecha Kucha, and I just got the 1 minute sign. So that's good. That worked out well. I'll take any questions if you have them. I appreciate you guys listening. I appreciate you guys getting up early here to hear me talk.
That was rapid fire. Thank you very much. You had it way in the back.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thanks for the great talk. Coming from a concert studio myself, I have a question a little bit the other way around. All day long yesterday we've heard, and I think we will hear today again, how important data is and how you can design by data basically. But I think many developers here who come from the mobile area and don't have, or mobile or casual or social or whatever you want to call that, who don't have that hardcore or console background might be interested in the other ingredient. Like the stuff that you take for granted because you have senior personnel which has done big games. You don't need to tell them what else. You need to make fun, so to speak. Now here comes the question. Yep. If you could name 3 things or something which you take for granted, what your people and your experience bring to the table, that be it in the area of high-level design or of gold standards or of that stuff that doesn't come out of data, because out of data you can only read existing trends or something that you take for granted. What is that? And maybe you could elaborate that a bit.
I think that as a Canadian, I'll use an analogy, and I spoke of this earlier with someone, that it's one thing, if you will, and that's the fact that these guys we've all been to the Stanley Cup. We've all been through, we've won, we've had that one game that won the game of the year or sold 10 million copies. Everybody knows what it takes to get there and how hard it is to be successful. It's not easy. And so everyone, there's a high level of expectation and a level of quality throughout the studio. So you don't have to tell somebody, that should be a little bit better, or, try and make that. Everyone's totally focused on doing the best job that they can. So that I don't take that I don't take it for granted, but I think that a lot of people don't understand how you can't really sort of train for that. It has to happen. The kind of experience. So that I think is the one thing that gives us certainly a level of strength, and I don't take that for granted at all. Now, that being said, these are people that are used to shipping something and then going on vacation for 2 weeks. So breaking that habit down was the trade-off. They had to come back, they had to take their vacations at closed beta instead of open, and get out of that mindset that it's the chance to fix something or polish it can come later when the game is up and live. So that was a different mindset. I mean, does that answer your question, or am I missing two things? You said three, but it was really that one, that experience of getting to that level of excellence.
Any other questions?
Hi. You said during the transition from console to online, you get rid of some of the production roles like project managers and so on. How did you do that? Did you create substitutes for that? Get you totally rid of them? How's it looking now?
It sounds like when I say got rid of them, I didn't okay, you're fired. It wasn't like that. It was transitioning people into different roles. So our embrace of, we sent people for Scrum training, and we tried to treat everybody in the company as a producer. So even though you may be a specialized, programmer or an artist, or you have a distinct skill, everybody there is capable of any given moment running their own Scrum. And what I like about that is that there's no more like throwing your work over the wall and okay, it's my piece of it is done. When you have your Scrum wall set up, every single person is walking up going, okay, I did this, and they move their sticky to here, or they put it into, I'm being blocked or impeded, or I've made progress. So I think it's that individual ownership of the task from the very beginning to when everyone agrees to get this body of work done for a given sprint, to the fact that you can see the progress and everyone has to stand up and take ownership of it, has made a huge difference. So we don't actually need that one person who tracks everything. It's all up there on the wall, and every single person becomes an owner or a product manager. They own their little piece of the work, and so that's really improved the velocity in the studio. I highly recommend it, and I know that the fellow from King.com was speaking about that yesterday as well, about agile. Any other questions?
I don't think there's any other way to do that, the job that you're doing, without agile. I mean, if you think you've tried to do it the classical waterfall way, it just doesn't work.
And if you think of your customers as the ultimate product owner, they're going to dictate to you what features and what things you need to do. So you have to build into your schedule the planning and the changes that you need to make based on the data that's coming in. So you can have your pre-release schedules and you can plan for content releases, but ultimately, if you've got data coming in and saying, for example, that a piece of your tutorial, you're getting a huge fall off in the conversion funnel where nobody's like, why are they not finishing this event? You have to go and react to that data. So Agile gives you the ability to plan for that and make the adjustments that you need before your next deploy.
I have a question.
All right.
How did you take a team of people that were used to working without data and give them both the appreciation for the data and the habituation to look at it?
What I found was that I think that in their previous existence or in previous employers, like someone like an EA, for example, the data is kind of hoarded at the executive level. And that actually these people wanted the data. They wanted to know how well things are going. So we've just become completely transparent and not in a sort of Machiavellian way to say, you need to tick up your KPIs or you're fired. It's not like that. People are just interested and genuinely curious. So we didn't really have to do much other than, once we put up the Swerve dashboard and people were coming over to my desk and saying, how are we doing? How are we doing? I said, well, here, I'll just put up a projector. So we bought a projector and we just put it up on the wall. And people were always talking about how well things were going at a given time. And they actually took a personal interest in our CCUs and how our conversion funnel was working. Yeah, it's really important to do that. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Olivier. I'm working in the localization industry, and I was wondering if you take into account internationalization in your development.
Of course. I mean, we build, but every territory has to be looked at as a separate business model. Some properties like with Family Guy, I don't know how well. I mean, that's a huge property in North America. We did very well. But, I was speaking at a conference in Asia, and people looked at me like I'd stepped off of a UFO. They had no idea what I was talking about. So I think that if it makes sense for an online game, for example, if you're getting a lot of traffic in Europe, maybe it makes sense to open a NOC here, or bring in a CSR team that speaks the language. Generally, what it makes sense is if there's enough of a business model, you can find a partner, like in say ProSiebenSat or somebody like that will take on and operate the game, and then you can localize. But you want to spend the time to make sure that you're not coding or building your assets in such a way that they can't accept EFIGs, which is what English, French, Italian, German, and Spanish, right? You want to make sure that you've at least covered that. Then you look at Benelux, then you look at the Nordics, and then you look, I think Portuguese is interesting because that gives you Brazil as well, right? So yeah, you have to build that in from the start. It's worth the extra 5% to make sure that you've got those assets set up.
I think we have time for one more.
It's nice to see a few more bodies in here.
Yeah. They came in after you finished speaking.
Yeah, I know.
I have one more question.
You can edit that out, though, right? You can make it look full at the beginning, if you will. That'd be great.
You talked about sunsetting a product.
Yes.
And I'd like to know how you sort of looked at that process in terms of how to make that happen gracefully with your audience.
Well, I mean, sometimes those decisions are not within the developer's control. The publisher or somebody else will do that. But I think what it is you look at the data and it's difficult. That's something that a console, if I may use a console publisher as an example, they might be used to a big sort of opening day launch where you go in the retail stores and there's lineups overnight and people are coming in to buy Halo or Gears of War. That's a different discussion. An online game needs to be turned on slowly, and then you have to work on building up your core compulsion loops, your economy, make sure that all your KPIs are functioning where you want them, and then scale it up. And only then do you want to spend all the money on marketing. So I think that decision to sunset is oftentimes, I've seen a lot of good products get sort of turned off before their time. So it's a function of patience. You need to find this sort of happy place where you can let games perk along, sometimes for up to a year, before you get the core economy and loops right. And at that point, then you want to dive in and turn it up. So it's not a decision that anyone takes lightly.
Thank you very much, Ian.
You're most welcome. Thanks, everyone.